So I decided to put a video series together. COVID's kind of driven some of that, and people that maybe don't feel safe to come in or they can't come in. And also, I'm starting to see a lot of videos kind of surface of some coaches doing some things that I think a lot of us other coaches wouldn't necessarily agree with, or isn't possibly the best way to do things. I think there's one or two ways of doing a lot of these things correctly, and there's 100 ways to do them wrong. And with that, especially with youth athletes and athletes in general, they've got about 1,000 ways throughout the season to injure themselves. We don't need to help them out with that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. They come to us for injury prevention, not just strength conditioning. Part of that is injury prevention. So I'm going to put a video series together. In each video, I can't promise it's going to be every week or even every couple weeks, but as I put videos together, I'm going to address the big lifts, of course, your squat, your bench, your deadlift. We're going to get into some Olympic lifts. Jamie just come back from USA Weightlifting certification. I'm USA Weightlifting certified. It's really nice to be able to get in there and kind of break those lifts down for some of you guys and girls that are interested in that. So we'll be doing some Olympic lifts, as well as touching a lot on speed and agility. I see a lot of that done wrong. There's this idea that you can slap a parachute on a kid, slap him on the butt, and be like, good job, kid. Just because you saw it on the internet, that's ridiculous. There's a methodology to that. There's a reason for some of the things that you do. You're trying to get different reactions, and you're trying to get the body to react differently to different stimulus. So it's not just a matter of, I'm going to do overspeed training 1,000 times and think these kids are going to get better. It's just not going to work that way. So we're going to address some things like that. And I don't claim to do everything 100% correctly. So feel free to chime in and say, Chad, why do you do it this way or why do you do it that way? And generally my answer is going to be, because I've been doing this for a long time and I've learned from guys and what they do and what they've done well, and they've gone on to train successful athletes and the science behind it. And I just kind of emulate that success. I don't try to reinvent the wheel. So as we go through this, I'm going to try to touch lightly on some of these things for general population as well as athletes. And I'm going to have some athletes and some of the folks from the gym come in and help me out with these, and they're going to do some demonstrations. So the first one I want to tackle today is box squats versus simply squatting to a box, because there is a difference. There's a huge difference. And each one has its own reasoning of why I'm going to use that lift, and depending on who that lifter is and what we're trying to achieve. So I want to talk about that and then talk about the difference of that. So today's won't be this giant technique video on squatting. That video will be coming, and I will touch on all of the ins and outs of squatting, front squats, and all of those things. Today, really I want to focus on the difference between box squats, why we use a box squat, what I'm trying to achieve in a box squat, and simply squatting to a box. So what I want to do first, I guess, is address the big elephant in the room. You guys are going to say, Chad, we've seen you do tap and go squats. We've seen you use touch and go squats with your athletes. You even had me do a touch and go squat, Chad. So what's the big deal here? Well, you're gonna have to understand why we use those versus an actual box squat. And for me, one of the reasons that I use a touch and go squat or a tap and go squat is gonna be as a depth gauge. So a lot of folks, if you're one of these guys or girls who, as the weight gets heavier and heavier and heavier, your squat gets shallower and shallower and shallower. So it's really just a reference to, hey, if your butt doesn't touch this med ball or this low bench or this low box, you're not at depth. You're already a strong squatter. Your technique's already solid. You're just squatting shallow. You're, dare I say, ego squatting. You're adding so much weight that you're just trying to not commit to the squat. So a lot of times I'll put that under you there to say, hey, squat to it as a reference to hit proper depth. That's what that is. I use it a lot for proper depth just to keep myself in check. Say, hey, I want to make sure I'm going parallel. That's going to be one of the biggest reasons where I'm doing a normal squat, but I'm just tapping to a reference, or I'm touching that reference to know I've gone deep enough. Another reason that I would use that is almost as a confidence booster for not just young lifters or people just getting into lifting, but also for maybe somebody coming off an injury, surgeries, rehab. So again, you're probably strong enough to squat an empty bar or lightweight or whatever I want you. Maybe we don't need to go 90-degree flexion, and I just want you to get comfortable getting under the bar. So it's a confidence booster to say, here's what we're gonna do. It's a training wheel, so to speak. So I'm just gonna put that box, maybe even a high box underneath you, and all I need you to do is get used to pressure through the feet. We'll go through all the cues, all the checklists, which again, we will touch on in a squat video. But I'm gonna do all those things to boost your confidence and my confidence in you as a lifter. So you'll see that as well sometimes. You're like, well, Chad, I saw you with a kid or with an athlete doing touch and go squats. That's one of the reasons I'm gonna do that. So before you call me out and say, oh, Chad, I've seen you do touch and go squats. That's the reasoning behind that. Also, athletes or coaches especially, that's a great opportunity. If you're gonna do those, it's a great opportunity to address some of these faults that I'm gonna talk about here in a minute. Whether you're doing a high tap to build confidence, rehab, whether you're working with a seasoned squatter, a brand new squatter, if you're recognizing faults right away and there's things that are happening to that lifter, you need to stop, back up, and strip the weight anyway. So we'll touch on those things. So again, what I want to do is get into a proper box squat, and we're going to identify some of these faults. Okay, one of the common faults you're going to see is what we call knee cave. Whether it's a new lifter or a young lifter, a lot of times you're going to see this. It's due through weakness through the hips. Again, we have other videos coming that we're going to correct some of these things. I'm going to show you some exercises we can do to strengthen that and help that out. But for right now, I just want you to recognize this fault, and we'll talk about cueing how to fix it. So she's going to get under the bar. Pretty good setup, pretty solid. Everything looks good until she gets ready to break at the hip, and then here's what happens. The knees cave together, and they pretty much stay together through the entire lift. Put that away. Again, we're going to talk about ways to correct that. Talk about telling her to spread the floor, keeping those knees over the feet, and different ways to strengthen that. One of the other things that you're going to see is knees jetting forward, or I'm getting on the balls in my feet and my knees want to jet forward. All that weight now is front loaded. That's also a cringeworthy one. So she's going to get under the bar. Nice setup again, and then here's what happens. All of a sudden she's forward and she's just folding. She's not really sitting back or squatting. Oh, that's a horrible lift. We're going to put that away. So again, giving a good demonstration here. We're super lightweight, guys. So those are kind of some of the cringeworthy faults that you're going to see. And those are some of the things that we're going to be able to fix with a box squat in that nice, safe environment. So another one of these faults that you're going to see commonly is a really soft setup. So as they get under the bar, he's kind of going to cringe a little bit because it's just uncomfortable. He's not activating those traps. He's not pulling down on that bar, getting that lat activation. He's just soft in his setup. What's going to happen here is that's going to cause him to really crumple in the middle when he gets down there, and he doesn't even have full hip extension. So we want to correct that right out of the gate. One of the ways we're going to correct this, we're just going to tell him, pull these elbows down tight into your hips, activate these lats. He's going to fill his entire belly, his entire core here full of air, and he's going to brace through the entire lift. So he's nice and tight, and he's going to give me a good squat here. We've corrected that. Good box squat. He's going to power up out of that. Beautiful. You can put that away. So one of the others we're going to see, in quite contrast to that squat right there, is he's going to completely lose air. He's going to lose midline in the bottom of that. So as he hits the bottom of that squat, he's just going to kind of crumple forward. We'd all seen this one before. So again, he gets under the bar. His setup might not be bad as he sets up right there. But all of a sudden, as he starts to lift, his body breaks forward. He rounds his back. It's a horrible lift, and he stands it up struggling and making everybody cringe and put it away. All right, that was a pretty good demonstration there on an ugly lift. Again, guys, we're using super lightweight here just to demonstrate some of these things, but most of you will see these. So in a box squat specifically, but you'll see this sometimes too with regular squats, people crashing out of the bottom, but we call this flopping to a box. This next one, this is a big no-no here for a number of reasons. One, anytime that you have a load over top of the shoulders here, you don't want any kind of loaded spinal flexion. That's just so bad in the first place. The last thing you want to do is jam that weight down on the spine as he flops to this box. Plus, lifters would most of the time have a hard time getting up out of that box, getting up out of the hole. If they flop, they're generally not going to be able to stand back up. But so he's going to get under the bar, he's going to get all set up, nice and tight. Not too bad, looking good so far. And then all of a sudden this happens and plop. And now he's got to struggle to get back up, or he hits a big old rock and we put that away. So one of the major reasons here that I'm going to use box squats, and the box squats are going to be used for, is to strengthen the glutes and the hamstrings, okay? That's going to be one of the biggest arguments out there of why you would use a box squat. I really want these athletes to have strong glutes and strong hamstrings. We got to really get strong through that posterior chain to be able to hit these athletic movements and stay injury-free. One of the other reasons that I'm going to use a box squat is to really coach bracing. One of the biggest things is people getting soft in the bottom of a squat, or even somewhere in the middle of the squat, and losing midline stability, and they crumple forward. Now what you end up with is a loaded spine, loaded spinal flexion, which is just not good in general. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about a couple of things I wanna see in the box squat. So in my setup, one of the first things I wanna do with my lifter is I wanna make sure that my box is set up right about parallel. Now, if you continue to see some of these faults that we talked about through the box squat, I'm obviously gonna have to elevate the box a little bit, which is not a problem. There's a tons of ways we can achieve that. This is a nice little box here that has several different levels. I'm gonna demonstrate here in a second with Aiden, where we've got a normal plyo box, and we can add some stall mats or anything you have, even bumper plates will work to get that height if you have those faults. Again, both my lifters here are pretty solid lifters. So today, we're gonna set this box up at parallel or even slightly below, right in there for this box squat. So, Colton's gonna demonstrate for me first, really good solid setup. So we talked about those faults, now we're gonna talk about solid setup. So he's gonna get under the bar for me, nice and tight, good activation. He's pulling those elbows down, nice and tight in there, getting those lats tight. He's gonna fill that air, big gulp. He's gonna set all the way to the box and power up out of there, and he can put that one away for me. Now what you see there, and we'll demonstrate again, is a slight rock. Key word here, guys, is slight rock. Not a big heavy rock. I don't want to see his feet come off the ground. That's a big no-no. But there's going to be a slight rock because I want him nice and tall. I don't want him broke forward. It's going to come back. It's going to release the glutes and the hamstrings a little bit, and then he's going to have to power back up out of that. That is the main reason for a box squat. Bracing, glute hamstring development. All the way down, all the way up. At no point will he lose that air. He's gonna hold it the entire time. So again, should look something like this. He gets under the bar. He's nice and tight. And he's going to gulp and set. He's bracing, slight rock, and he powers up out of there. Full set, parallel, tight, powers up out of the lift. That is a good looking box squat. Okay, so I'm gonna use Aiden here to demonstrate a couple more good solid box squats. So you saw Colton go through those squats. He's a little bit longer levered. He's a taller lifter. He's a bigger lifter. That box squat works perfect for him. What I want to do is I want to demonstrate the shorter levered lifter here, smaller lifter, and it's going to work just as well for her. So some of these things that we also want to look for is your lifter looking down. So as she gets under the bar, she might want to look and kind of peek back at the box. I tell my athletes as a confidence booster, that's okay to give yourself a quick peek just to know it's where you need it to be. But then I want your head up right away. Head up. Rib flare, fill that belly full of air just like we looked at with Colton, hold it through the entire lift and come up. The key here is to get nice and tall and not break forward. So she's gonna get under the bar for me. She's got a great setup, so there's some good things to look at. Nice and tight, high bar position, elbows are down into her lats, and she's gonna sit through that entire lift and slight rock and come up. So go ahead and put it out the way. Good, we'll get another one of those in there, but again, great lift, nice and tight. You can see through the entire lift, she's bracing. She doesn't lose midline at any point. Again, guys, it's almost filling your belly with air. It's not a breath. It's nice and tight and you're bracing through that entire lift. So let's see another one of those, Aiden. So she gets under the bar, nice and tight setup, pulling that bar down into her traps, took a quick peek, her head's up, and a nice, beautiful lift, nice and tall as we put that away. So again, great demonstration of a box squat. Sitting all the way to the box, nice and tight. I'm tall, I stand all the way up. Great glute hamstring activation through that entire lift. Great bracing through the entire lift. Pulling that bar down into my lats. I get a full squat through that. So now that you've kind of seen what a good box squat looks like, what I'm gonna have these guys do is demonstrate a set of 3. So that you can kind of see how this thing links together and you see these in progression. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna brace every single time for me, check off all those boxes, know that they're tight, know that their feet are spreading the floor. They're gonna sit back to that box, keeping that air, and stand all the way back up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have Eads here go first. She's nice and tight under the bar. She's gonna give me a great set of 3, bracing every single time, slight rock, she stands up. We're gonna do another. You can notice how she got her air right there. And again, great demonstration. She's gonna stay tight all the way until she puts that bar away. And now Colton, same concept here. He's gonna give me a set of 3 so you guys can kind of see what this looks like. He's gonna get under the bar. Again, beautiful setup, nice and tight. He's bracing through that entire lift. A quick peek, and he's ready to go. Full sit, slight rock, up he goes, nice and tight to the entire lift. Notice that air, he takes it to top, holds it through the entire lift, back up, and big number 3 here, he gets his air, he's bracing through the entire lift, and back up he goes. That is a box squat. Those are perfect demonstrations of box squat. Simply tapping a box, not checking the faults, probably a high box at that, is not a box squat. Again, we address why there's reasons for doing those things if you're following the guidelines and you're really watching that lift or squat. But again, when you want to talk about a box squat, those are good examples of what a box squat should look like. So again, you're gonna have some videos coming your way. I will go in depth on squat, front squat, some of those things down the road, and we'll talk about some of these faults that you've seen. But if there's something in this video that you have questions about, don't hesitate to give me a shout. You can hit me up on chat@thestrengthlab.com. You can shoot me a message on Facebook, Strength Lab on Facebook, The Strength Lab Ohio on Instagram. You can walk right in my door, and you're gonna be able to contact me through the YouTube page now, because the Strength Lab YouTube page, I'm gonna start uploading some of these videos. I'm gonna get some of those quarantine videos up there for you as well. And there's some great videos from some old training footage and stuff that we have. It's kind of neat to go back and look on. So I'm gonna have that up and running. So make sure you go and you check that out. I guess this is my big shout out too, to make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We're gonna start that whole rigmarole right down the road. So go ahead and get in there and do those things. But again, I'd like to thank Aiden and Colt for coming in, helping me out. 2 real good lifters, been working with me for a long time. Again, we don't claim to do everything perfect, but what we really do try to do is make sure that we're doing all the things right every time to make sure that we're injury free. Again, athletes injure themselves enough. They don't need your help doing it. So just really make sure that they're going through these lifts and doing all the things they're supposed to do. And if not, there's all kinds of ways to correct it. And we can work together to correct these things and keep these athletes healthy. So thank you.